The Handmaid's Tale is a TV series first aired in 2017 based on the 1985 book written by Margaret Atwood. I'll read a summation from our dear friend Wikipedia. It is set in a near-future New England in a strongly patriarchal, totalitarian theocratic state known as the Republic of Gilead, which has overthrown the United States government. The central character and narrator is a woman named Offred, one of the Handmaids, a group of women who are forcibly assigned to produce children for the Commanders, the ruling class of men in Gilead. The original book has spawned many different types of media, from audiobooks, films, radio, stage productions, and television. I think that The Handmaid's Tale is an excellent example of world building in an alternative reality, and I want to talk more about Gilead and its world building. For this, I'll be referring mostly to the book and the TV series. The TV series and the book are very closely intertwined, as Margaret Atwood served as a consulting producer, and the first season of The Handmaid's Tale is pretty much exactly the same as the books, following its story beat by beat. Before I can get into the world building and how Gilead itself works, I have to talk about its rise to power. This world takes place in a world very much like our own, except years of war and pollution have led to a fertility crisis. The low birth rate is resulting in economic devastation, populist upheavals, and a religious revival across the country. The US government decided to respond to the problem by enacting several different policies, including making vasectomies illegal and requiring husbands to formally consent to their wives filling up their birth control. However, other people thought that the US government was not doing enough and had a completely different idea of how to tackle the issue. The Sons of Jacob are the conspiratorial group that devised the philosophy and social structure for a totalitarian patriarchal theocracy and orchestrated the rise of Gilead. The Sons of Jacob organized and orchestrated a massive coup d'etat. A coup d'etat is a sudden, violent, and unlawful seizure of power from a government. The French word meaning stroke of state or rebellion. After the government takedown, the Sons of Jacob assumed power and began placing the seeds that would eventually lead to the establishment of Gilead. For example, they enforced laws such as making it illegal for a woman to work or own property and money. The progression of Gilead was slow. It took its time, as many different agendas do. It didn't just happen overnight. It wasn't that the White House was attacked and then suddenly every fertile woman was made a handmaid. It was a slow progression that slowly brought about the rise of Gilead, the Republic. But what is Gilead? Now, Gilead isn't simply a republic. It's a set of ideals actualized. But it's probably best that I give you the geography of Gilead so you can visualize it for yourself. Now, in the alternate reality, the number of states have been decreased in favor of much larger districts. Therefore, there aren't as many states in Gilead as there are in real-life America. Here's a list of states in which Gilead has complete occupation over: Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois bar the Chicago City, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, Nyack, formerly New York State, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. Gilead also has colonies, areas contaminated by pollution and radioactive waste. These are Arizona and Missouri. The active war sites include California, that also has a large contamination coverage, and there are large rebel presences in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. When we want to talk about the world building of Gilead, it's important to talk about class and authority. As mentioned before, the federal government was replaced by a unitary public, with each region governed by a committee of commanders. In Gilead, there's a very clear social caste system. I'll read this out in order of importance. Commanders, wives, and the next three are all on equal playing fields, and those are eyes, angels, and guardians. Under those are aunts, and under aunts are Marthas and male servants. Under Marthas and male servants are handmaids. Under handmaids are the econo people, and under the econo people are unwomen. Commanders are high-class men who are permitted to have wives and to have handmaids. Wives refer to the wives of commanders. They are high-class women and the matriarchs in charge of their own home affairs. Eyes are the secret police and can be anyone. Angels were soldiers in the war and they are highly regarded, and guardians are soldiers who were not in the war and act as military police. All three eyes, angels and guardians are men. Aunts are powerful women. Before the Rise of Gilead, they tended to be single, divorced or unmarried women, or are older and or infertile. They are the only women permitted to read and write in Gilead. They are unable to marry. Marthas are servants in a commander's home or in domestic industries. For example, some Marthas may work in laundries. They are often infertile, unmarried, low-ranking women. They cannot marry. Handmaids. Handmaids are assigned to a household to give a commander and his wife a baby. They cannot keep this baby. They are fertile women who also cannot marry. Econo people, econo wives and husbands. They are low-status people. The men in this caste system are low-ranking commanders, professionals or workers, and the women, like commanders' wives, submit to their husbands. Econo people cannot be given handmaids or marthas. If an econo husband is promoted, his wife will become a wife. The econo wives may be fertile and can keep their children if they have them. Econo people, couples and families were permitted to remain together if they followed Gilead's ideals before the war or if they conformed to the new laws after the takeover. Unwomen. These are women stripped of all human rights if they did not conform to Gilead's society or if they broke the law, e.g. those who could or would not fit into the classes above, such as feminists, lesbians, failed handmaids, etc. Or they could be widows of commanders' wives or nuns. One thing about Gilead that isn't exactly biblical is eugenics. In a flashback, it can be seen that women with Down syndrome are being led to their end in a very brutal scene. As J.K. Chesterton wrote, "If man is not a divinity, then he is a disease." The Catholic convert was a British far-right journalist and political activist, and he was a member of the British Union of Fascists. I don't think I really need to say any more about that. This is the first big red flag that Gilead isn't really about God and is just cherry-picking verses, because eugenics goes against the Bible completely. Genesis 1:27, and so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. In the eyes of God, every single human being is perfect. It doesn't matter what disability you may or may not have. I will explain more about this red flag later on in the video. Children. Daughters and sons are expected to perform different roles. For example, girls cannot read or write. Daughters and sons tend to live with commanders and their families who are deemed worthy of having children. They are often abducted children from families after the Gilead takeover or are the children of handmaids. Gender, class, religion and law are all intertwined. Gilead is a theocratic society. All laws and societal customs are based on the Christian Bible, which in turn dictates gender and class divides. For example, the concept of a patriarchal society comes from 1 Timothy 2:12. I do not permit a woman to teach or to assume authority over a man. She must be quiet. And handmaids are the result of Genesis 31. And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said unto Jacob, Give me children, or else I die. Genesis 33. And she said, Behold my maid Bilhah, go on into her, and she shall bear upon my knees, so that I may also have children by her. It's also worth noting that the Bible version Gilead appears to adhere to is the King James Bible. From what I understand, most Bibles have the same sentiments in them, but the wording is slightly different depending on which one you look at. Gilead is also heavily reliant on censorship. The government places themselves as the spokespeople of God, and speaking against the government is blasphemy. Matthew 12:31-32. Therefore I tell you, every sin and blasphemy will be forgiven people, but the blasphemy against the Spirit will not be forgiven. Mark 3:29. But whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit will never be forgiven. He is guilty of an eternal sin. Punishments in Gilead are also predictably dictated by Bible teachings. For example, having a look at Proverbs 13:24, whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them. Basically, if the kid's acting a certain way, just smack them, it's fine, God allows it. But not only is it day-to-day punishments of kids just misbehaving a little bit, it's also legal. Matthew 5:29. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. This is what happens to Janine when she speaks out against the aunts, especially Aunt Lydia in particular. They take out her eye. And the punishment for violating a girl, as seen in one of the episodes, comes from Deuteronomy 22:25. But if the man finds the girl who is betrothed in the field, and the man seizes her and her, then only the man who her shall die. Causing harm to a child in Gilead is extremely severely punished. However, causing harm to a child in Gilead could be anything from actually harming a child, wanting to have an abortion, or wanting to take your child out of the country because they're living in Gilead. And Gilead is a godly place, and taking a child away is causing harm, and thus Matthew 18:6, if anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea. I could talk a little bit more about the economics of Gilead, but economics is a subject that bores me to tears. In a nutshell, when it comes to Gilead, they rely on traditional means of producing goods. There doesn't seem to be much of an industrial revolution in Gilead. In fact, they've gone the other way. They have cows that produce milk to make cheese and butter, chickens that lay eggs, and wheat fields ploughed by men and horses to make bread. When Emily goes over to Canada and has her medical check, it's noted that she has high cholesterol because of all of these things that she's been eating. So while most of the residents of Gilead are probably suffering from several deficiencies in vitamins, it's also worth noting that Gilead has a very low carbon footprint due to all of the clean ways that they produce things. This is their main selling point to the rest of the world, to make them look good for all of the terrible atrocities that they commit. Hey, our birth rate is rising. We have a low carbon footprint. Just ignore the human rights violations. Gilead does have some trade deals with other countries, but this isn't really delved into too much, so I don't know much about it. So I've talked about the basic structure of Gilead. Obviously, its key points are to do with social, caste, and religion that is very much tied into law and the gender divide. I would like to talk about Gilead's emphasis of practicality over ethics. Looking at Gilead at a face value, you would think that at least the leaders of Gilead would completely buy into this. But not many of them do. Commander Joseph Lawrence, who is credited to be the architect of Gilead, doesn't appear to be very pious at all, and doesn't really care about religion that much. In certain flashbacks, we can see the men that would become the commanders talking about the Bible as if it was an opportunity to sell an idea. They're picking parts of the Bible to put an emphasis on to justify what they're going to do. It seems as if they're doing what a lot of religious extremists are doing, picking out very specific parts to fit a personal bigoted narrative. And therefore they can justify the existence of Gilead on two levels. The first, it's supported by the Bible, and the second is, it works. One thing that Commander Waterford said really struck me. It is, better doesn't mean better for everyone. They're taking the utilitarian principle, which is the happiness for the majority is worth it even if it means suffering for the minority. And when we're talking about the majority versus the minority in this case, it isn't actually talking about population, because the majority of people in Gilead are the ones suffering. The majority of the population of Gilead are the lower class. Therefore, when we take the utilitarian principle, we're talking about the rest of the world being better off in comparison to the suffering of the lower class of Gilead. When Gilead commits the atrocities that they're doing, they aren't saying that it's better for the lower classes, they're saying it's better for the rest of the world. Because again, the birth rate is rising in Gilead and the carbon emissions are decreasing. Those two concepts are great. We like it when there's a decent birth rate. We like it when carbon emissions are low. But then we have to talk about what is the cost of having those things. Because a decent birth rate and low carbon emissions are something that we would want to see in a utopia. But Gilead isn't a utopia, it's a dystopia. And so we have to really speak about free will. There's a really interesting concept that's explored in a season of Angel. Jasmine is a woman who wants to bring about world peace. Everybody who sees her instantly wants to follow her. They worship the ground that she walks on. She is able to captivate the public, and it works. World peace happens. There's no more fighting just because Jasmine says it needs to stop. What's the catch? Everyone is under her spell. They don't have their own free will. And if they manage to touch some of her blood, they can see her for the monster that she truly is. All humans are mindlessly devoted to her and have absolutely no choice in the matter. In a similar vein, in Gilead, we can have these good things if you just submit, if you do what you're told. You have no choice. The only way that humanity could ever have a true peaceful utopia is if we had a dystopia, where no one can make free choices and everyone obeys, no questions asked. It's a very pessimistic way of looking at the world as well, because the only way that we can truly ever have peace is if we're ruled over by one singular dictator and no one ever has any freedom to make any choices ever again. And this is where the ends justify the means truly comes into play. Gilead completely encapsulates the idea of practicality over humanity and ethics. And the brilliant part about it is, there's real-world precedents for this actually happening. A lot of people thought that the women's march scene in Handmaid's Tale was filmed after the real-life women's marches in America and across the world after Trump's election. No, that scene was actually filmed well before Trump became president. And then it also goes on to commentate about women's right to reproduce and have the autonomy over their own bodies. And oh, that's no longer a constitutional right in America in 2022. The alternate reality of Gilead mirrors our own reality in its worst ways, but is yet still plausible. And that's why I think The Handmaid's Tale is a brilliant piece of work. It's relatable in a really uncomfortable way. I hope you guys found this video interesting and informative, and if you'd like me to do more deep dives on The Handmaid's Tale, I would be absolutely up for that. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.